Okay, hello, good morning. Welcome to all of you joining us on this fine morning. I was going to say Tuesday morning, it's definitely Thursday. Fine Thursday morning. Welcome all of you that are coming with us this morning to your Diana Award webinar series. Today we are looking at rewriting your anti-bullying policy. We're also going to be touching on how to record bullying incidents and all the different issues around that. But just a very big warm welcome to you. If you haven't been on one of our webinars before, then a massive welcome to you. We've been doing these in response to the COVID-19 lockdown, thinking about how do we retain that relevance and how do we remain helpful to staff and students around the UK who need it the most. And obviously we've tried to do these webinars as a way to alleviate some of those concerns and to offer something out to you lovely staff members. And it's a pleasure to have you with us today. Today's webinar is going to be very interactive. As you can already see, we have our wonderful moderator, Hannah, working behind the scenes on the chat function, giving you some helpful links. We also do have the Q&A function, which is going to be live throughout today's training. Hannah will be responding to all of your questions as best as possible, but we also are going to leave about 5 minutes at the end of today's training in which you can post and ask any of your burning questions, and I will be hoping to answer them in real time, anything that it is that you think I can help you with. And we do also have some interactive polls which you're going to be able to vote on live on your screen. And we're actually going to get the first one of these up, just a little nice icebreaker as we wait for any more people to join us. And we're going to get an icebreaker up for you on screen. It's just a little bit of fun and we can see which way you vote. So the first one's a little bit random, but I enjoy it. When passing a reflective surface, do you use it to see if anybody's following you? Check yourself out, who doesn't? Or contemplate the deeper meaning of life? You're walking down the street, you see a mirror, a car window, you see a reflective surface. Which one of those do you do? We've got a couple of votes in so far, and I have to say, I appreciate the honesty. We also have one vote. Someone's clearly often being followed, which isn't really funny. If you need any help, do get in touch. We have 50% of you voting so far. I'm going to leave this one up on screen. Anyone joining and hasn't had the explanation is probably very disconcerted about the topic of this webinar. It is just a little bit of fun. It is an icebreaker to warm us up this morning. Hope you've all had your teas and coffees. I definitely feel appropriately caffeinated. I'm going to give you 3 more seconds to vote on this one. 3, 2, 1. And so the majority, check yourself out, doesn't everybody? Again, I do like that honesty. And then 1 is just checking, just to be sure. Anyone following me? This guy's been walking with me for a while. Troubling. What we're going to do is we're going to go on to the second one. We're going to get your second icebreaker just as we wait for a few more people. And we'll see which way you vote for this one. Now, this one is interesting. What's the strangest thing you've done while attending a meeting online, a virtual webinar just like this? Have you eaten your breakfast? You've been wearing pajamas? Made your lunch at the same time? Brushed your teeth? Would be strange. Or watched Netflix side by side? Have you done or are you currently doing any of these? I mean, it is quite an early morning for some. You might still be in pajamas, fair play. I might be just doing that typical t-shirt formal upstairs and a casual downstairs, perhaps. Brushed your teeth has just come in there. Okay, interesting. Whilst attending a meeting online, just getting the nationals, that's surely got to be off camera. That's got to be just a tuning in. No one can see me going to town on my canines. 42% of you voted so far. I'm going to leave it up for a couple more seconds, and then I think we'll get started with today's training. Very excited to deliver this topic. We have never ever delivered this topic to staff members ever before, so you are the very first. Congratulations. I hope it lives up to your non-existent expectations. I'm going to give you 3 more seconds. 2, 1. All right, let's have a look. So we have a couple of eating breakfast, brushing your teeth, but most of you wearing pajamas. Is that currently? Fair play if you are. Why not? You've got nowhere to go. Get those comfies on. Get ready to learn about anti-bullying. That's the obvious sequence of events. I'm going to stop rambling. I'm going to go straight into your training. Just want to give you a massive warm welcome this morning. Thank you for joining us. If you haven't seen me before, my name is Charlton. For the last 2 years, I've been working with the Diana Award as an anti-bullying training coordinator. which essentially means my job has been to travel across the UK, going into primary schools and secondary schools, and to deliver our anti-bullying ambassador program, which trains young people and staff to be that upstander in their communities, to offer their emotional support to anybody who's going through bullying behavior, and kind of just to be that role model, with special emphasis definitely put on young people taking more responsibility to be that change that they want to see, and to support each other with peer-to-peer support framework. And I have absolutely loved every second. Some random likes and dislikes. Bit of a bougie choice, but I love pistachio ice cream. As you can see, I'll explain later. I did used to live in Italy. That pistachio gelato, absolutely unparalleled. Dislikes now. It's not the people, in the spirit of anti-bullying, it's not the people, it's the habit, but the habit of those who just relax and will spend the majority of their evening just with their mouth agape, just I don't understand it. Do you not notice? You're not going to get dry mouth, you need a drink, you're going to catch flies. I don't trust it, I don't get it. That's just a random dislike. Random fact, I have been an English teacher in quite a few different countries. Italy, Germany, Cambodia, all with very, very different sets of students and cultures, but absolutely loved it. And I'm very pleased to kind of be able to bring that into the spirit of anti-bullying, combine the two, and hopefully be able to give you listening along, you wonderful staff members who are giving up your time to be with us today, with some helpful tips that we can use now in lockdown, but as we're gearing up to go back into schools. And let's just get started with what we're going to be covering today. So the aims of today's webinar. The first one, quite simply, to understand the importance of a student-friendly anti-bullying policy. What does that look like? What does that mean? And then how do we go about doing that? Which is kind of moving on to the second one. How do we review our school's anti-bullying policy? Do we need to? If we do review it, what kind of things are we looking for? Are we looking for certain changes? What do we think should be in its place? All of these different issues. Third, basically to move on to the second one, to increase our confidence when reviewing an anti-bullying policy, our confidence in knowing what to change, in knowing how it should be formed, and the kind of the narrative that's going to be beneficial for those in our school community. Then we're going to be moving on to looking at recording. So the fourth aim is to understand the legal requirements when recording bullying incidents, and finally, to increase our confidence in how to record those bullying incidents. Are there any processes we can put in place? Can we make it easier? And can we kind of try to promote a culture in which students feel more comfortable reporting so that we can then ultimately record? These are our aims, and this is what we're hoping that all of you will have at least grown in your understanding by the end of today's training. So without further ado, let's just go on to the very first topic. An anti-bullying policy. What's the big deal? Now, I'm going to put a bit of body of text onto the screen. I'll read it out for all of those of you listening along, but it just explains a little bit more the importance of what an anti-bullying policy is trying to achieve. So, every school in England must have measures in place to prevent all forms of bullying, and it's a requirement in England that every school has a formal anti-bullying policy. This is statutory law supported by the Department for Education. It says, individual schools are allowed to choose the type of policy they use, but they must have one in place, and this is a requirement by law. There is a little bit of a link there, just on a bit more guidance of the DfE, but ultimately, I think this is a fantastic law, but there are some issues surrounding this, and we're going to kind of explore this when it comes to an anti-bullying policy. Every school needs one, but every school has the freedom to choose what type of policy they use. But what we're going to explore is that I don't think that choice is ever exercised appropriately, and that policies are more often than not treated as a simple tick box, and we're going to explore exactly who they're for. Anti-bullying policies, who are they really for? And before we go into it, so I'm actually going to put the first interactive poll live up on your screen, and I want to simply ask all of you staff listening along, do you think that your students and parents of your school actually have read and understood your school's anti-bullying policy? Hopefully you're going to get this live on screen. There it is. So how confident are you that the students and parents in your school have read and understood your anti-bullying policy? Give you a few seconds to vote on this whilst I take a well-timed drink. We have 75% of you voting so far. I'm going to give you 3 more seconds to vote. 3, 2, 1. Okay, results are in. As you can see, every single one of you listening along have either said no confidence whatsoever or not very confident. Now, that ultimately completely supports exactly what I'm trying to get across here. The Department for Education said to every school, you must have an anti-bullying policy, but you get to choose what it's like. Unfortunately, the vast majority of schools have taken that guidance and have simply produced, on average, perhaps a 7 or 8 page document with full of jargon, almost like a legal text. The terms and conditions nobody ever reads, but everybody accepts. And doesn't really publish it out to those within the school community and doesn't make it accessible. So who is it really for? Personally, I would say Ofsted. I'm going to test this function, but can you give me a virtual raise of the hand if you would agree that the majority of anti-bullying policies in schools are actually for the purpose of Ofsted inspections, rather than being beneficial for students to understand how a school is tackling bullying, parents to understand what schools are doing in anti-bullying, and staff members to know which processes to follow? Because ultimately that has to be priority, no? If it's really tackling bullying in school, everybody in the school community needs to be aware of what that process is and what they can do to contribute. So when we're looking at an anti-bullying policy, as staff members, all of you with us today, you're here because you want to make a difference, you want to improve a culture in your school, and that's incredible. So how can we do that? When we're looking at our anti-bullying policy, we need to be asking ourselves the following questions. What is actually good about our current policy? We don't have to start with negatives. What is good about what's written? What would you change? Is it the length? Because to be honest, I've looked at a lot of policies. I've researched what they are in primary schools and secondary schools, and I'm going to say the average policy is probably about 7 or 8 pages. No student is going to read that. Not many staff members are going to read that to its full extent, and parents definitely aren't. So what's the point? What would you change? Do students understand the policy? Is it written in legal terms? Is there a lot of jargon? Is there complicated vocabulary? Students aren't going to be able to follow it if so. And not just students, parents. If there is an issue around parents coming into school, all guns blazing, my child's being bullied, what are you going to do about it? All of a sudden, you don't have to have that immediate pressure, that immediate tension, if your school's anti-bullying policy is incredibly accessible and very simple, so that the majority of parents have understood it, so they actually already understand what your school is doing to tackle these types of issues. Next, is it easy to find on your school website? Is it accessible to those who should really be understanding what it says? If the answer to the majority of these questions, for example, do they understand it, is no, then let's take a look at what we can do. And as staff members, you can be the one to lead that change, to take it to SMT, and to really ask yourselves, who is this really for? So, how do we make it student friendly? I'm going to put an example up on screen. You should be able to see it now. This is from Thomas Walling Primary School, who've done an incredible job of just simply making it a one-page, really simple, almost call to action, and a little bit of discussion. So it just says, we're a caring school, no one deserves to be bullied. What actually is bullying? They've got a very simple definition here that primary school students are going to be able to understand. They have the 3 different types, verbal, physical, and cyber. And then it says, what do teachers and children do to stop bullying? Not putting the emphasis solely on staff, not putting it on the head teacher, but using staff and students together. And it's just got a few bullet points as to simple things that everybody can do to make a difference. Now, for me, this is a really good example of something that young people are going to be able to respond to, they're going to be able to recognize, and they know exactly how they can contribute to making a difference. And this is a perfect example, but what else can we do? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you, all of you lovely staff members listening along, I'm going to take you through some easy processes as to how we can look at our policies and how we can change them for the better. So the first one starts with a review. Look at what you already have, and you don't have to do this alone. This is something you can bring to a staff meeting. If you have kind of quarterly meetings or SMT meetings, then raise this as an agenda item that you want to bring up. And don't be afraid to get students involved in this. If you have a student council, this is a perfect council matter for your students to feel like they have something to contribute to, that they can make a difference, and that peer-to-peer support comes in here. So review what you already have and get students involved in that review so that everybody's on the same page. After that, gather specific ambassadors. Now, if your school doesn't have anti-bullying ambassadors, then definitely get in touch. Our training is free. We are waiting to book in as soon as we can go back to schools. But if you don't have ambassadors, have a look at your school councils. If you have buddies, any students that you feel want to make a difference, gather them up, have a look at your anti-bullying policy and ask them what they think needs to be changed, because surely they are your best point of call to making something student friendly. After that, map out a new approach. Have a look at other examples, have a look online, and just ask yourselves as staff, ask your SMT and ask students to all filter into a process of looking at what we should do in the future. How do we make it better? Once you've done that, let the students lead. You are trying to make a student-friendly anti-bullying policy, so get the students involved in that decision-making and work together on this. And let them be creative. It doesn't have to be this 8-9 page body of text. It can be a poster competition. It can be a t-shirt design. It can be a campaign that you put out on your website. All it simply is a message. How you want to portray that message, the Department of Education have told you that each school gets to decide. You choose what your policy is. So let the students be creative as possible, and don't be afraid to also have two. If you agree that Ofsted needs something professional and almost legal sounding to get that tick, I understand that. But then have a student-friendly one to go alongside it. That's surely a better approach. Finally, publicize that policy, get it out there. Whatever your school is saying you are doing to tackle bullying behavior, the parents of your school need to be aware. Students definitely need to be aware, and publicize it on your website for the general community and get that community involvement in school, because you cannot tackle bullying with just one of these groups contributing or being aware of your approach. It needs to be a whole school approach and a joint effort. So these are quick step-by-step basis as to how to really get your policy to the next level, get that student involvement, and I'm really quite confident that this would contribute to a much better policy and a better culture in school. So hopefully that's quite helpful. And just from a little bit of inspiration, this is genuinely the exact same advice that we give to staff and students when we physically deliver our anti-bullying training, and it has had some really cool results. I'm going to hopefully see if this works. There might not be any sound to this video, but we do have subtitles. This is just an example of a school taking the advice I've just given and running with it to really good effects. So although that was obviously a secondary school, there are examples of primary schools doing exactly the same thing. And it's a really good way to get your students to feel like they really do have a part to play in school and their voices are really listened to. Really, really quick win. Another example that I want to show you is one of my absolute favorites. I think this is absolutely incredible. So there's a school called Hereward College. And again, I'm going to put a little bit of text on the screen, but I'll read it out to you. Based in Coventry, they believed that their school's anti-bullying policy was not very accessible, and they had a lot of students that had additional or varying needs. So what they did is they created a video in which the policy was presented by a sign language, thus enabling students who are deaf to understand exactly what it says. And they got such good results and a really good reaction from the community to this, because they let students decide what do you think the policy needs to be. And obviously there's a lot of students in the school who were deaf, who had differing needs, and it really did try and cater to all of these. And they had a really, really good approach. So what currently makes your school's policy inaccessible, and what can you do to ensure that it's available for everybody to know about? Another question to ask ourselves, what other creative ways are there to present a policy? As you can see on the right-hand side, Hereward College, their students created a sign language video that they just had rotating around the school TVs, the school computers, every so often throughout the day. Just really clear for any parents who are coming in to visit the school. It's really clear and there to look at. Any visitors, especially, and look, even if we are playing the Ofsted game, Ofsted inspector comes into school, they see that you have this accessible video rotated around the school. It's just such a quick win. And something that could really impact. The whole video is available there to watch. It is really quite cool and heartwarming. And again, this is absolutely something that you can do in primary schools to get your students to be more involved. So hopefully this has helped. Before we move on to the next part of training, which is talking about recording incidents, I just want to see if any of this is actually, you think that this would help. So I'm going to get another poll up on screen. And it's really just asking whether you feel more confident now that you can actually create a student-friendly policy. So there it is. How confident are you that after this information, you could go and create a new student-friendly anti-bullying policy upon returning to school? Okay, we've got 77% of you voting so far. I'll give you 3 more seconds. Hope you just vote completely honestly. I'll give you 3, 2, 1. And to be honest, that is really, really heartwarming. The fact that it's either very confident or reasonably confident really speaks volumes. That is exactly the point of what we're trying to achieve. And I really hope that some of this is useful. We do have quite a lot of resources. Hannah has probably put them into the chat because she's just that excellent on how to create a student-friendly anti-bullying policy. I know that it's difficult to remember everything we've gone through on the slides once we go back into schools. So hopefully the resources will be a way for you to be able to do that. And just thank you very much for listening along. We're going to go on to the next topic, which is recording incidents. I'm going to go over quite a few different things about this. So, first one, again, this is quite wordy, but I'm going to read it out. And this is simply the Department for Education's legal guidance published in 2017, as we can see, on schools' statutory responsibilities to record incidents. So it says, staff should develop a consistent approach to monitoring bullying incidents in their school and evaluate whether this approach is effective. For some schools, this will remain recording incidents so they can monitor incident numbers and identify whether bullying is recurring between the same pupils. Others don't want to keep written records, and so we want schools to exercise their own judgment as to what will work best for their pupils. And again, it's that last bit that I really think is overlooked. In this country, we're often pushing for devolution. We want councils to have more control. We want schools to have individuality. But the thing is, it is there written in law. I just don't believe that it's truly acted upon. Schools are able to have their own policy, and schools are actually able to think about what is the best process for us with our students and our culture to record bullying incidents and record incidents of any type of different behavior. So let's have a look at this in more detail, because as a school, as a staff lead, you can again raise this with your senior leadership team, your head teacher, and you can look at your process for recording incidents and judge whether it's effective. If you believe that you do have a disproportionate number of bullying incidents, incidents of different cultures, different disagreements, then have a look at your recording process and see if there's something we can do. And again, we're going to be taking you through a step-by-step basis, and hopefully this just gives a little bit more of an insight as to what we can change. Because I think, for me, I think a lot of schools fall under the trap of following tradition. Oh, this is the way we've always done it. It's important to remain innovative and fresh, especially as our culture and society is changing so quickly. Let's just make sure that our processes are changing along with it. So what type of behavior incidences must we record by law? So the first one, any prejudice-based incident, so anything perceived by the victim to be prejudicial based on a protected characteristic, by law needs to be recorded, and I'm sure that that doesn't come as any surprise. And again, similar to that is a hate crime, so any incident motivated by something like a group of race, religion, sexual orientation, again, looking at those protected characteristics, absolutely needs to be logged and communicated to the police. And then thirdly, any type of bullying behavior, so repeated negative behavior intended to make someone feel upset, uncomfortable, or unsafe, absolutely does need recording. But what does recording actually mean? Does it simply mean just writing it down? Does it mean saving it somewhere? Who's allowed to look at it? When do you use it? All of these different issues that I don't believe the majority of staff are appropriately trained on. Maybe a safeguarding lead, maybe a head teacher, but it's so important that everybody in your school's staff team needs to be aware of how to do this, but crucially, why? What's the point? What are we trying to achieve? So I'm going to take you through a step-by-step on how best to record all of these different types of incidents. And the first one is ensuring that every single staff member, which could potentially include your non-academic focused staff, things like those who work at the playground at lunch, even things like bus drivers, cleaning staff, anyone who works in the school surely needs to be trained on how to record incidents, because it doesn't just happen in the classroom. It definitely happens on the bus home. It definitely happens at lunchtime. And every staff member should be trained when it's appropriate to record an incident and how. So when it comes to anything to do with there's a safeguarding risk, anything to do with bullying behavior, but also when you have a new student coming into school, it can be incredibly helpful to have that information from a previous school. Anything to do with, have they been bullied before? Do they have any additional needs? All of these different types need to be recorded as well. And the thing is, it might seem trivial, but even relationship conflicts, even if you have two students who have fallen out, it's worth getting the information down, because that could form part of a wider issue. That could form part of something that then begins to spiral. And it's better to have the information down first to leave you in a better position to be able to deal with these types of issues. So that's the first step. Next, gather as much detail as possible for all of these different types of incidents. And when I say detail, I mean things like names of those involved, dates, times, actions, quotes, and outcomes. What actually happened? What are the next steps? Who was involved? Which staff member was involved? And it's not that we are trying to penalize anyone. It's not that we're trying to highlight anyone's incompetence. It's nothing to do with that. It's simply, you are in a much better position to deal with things like bullying behavior if you nip it in the bud and you catch these instances in the first point of call, and you just get as much information as possible. Again, it really is just to help everybody in school to remain safe and happy. Next one, keep records safe, secure, and accessible. What we mean by that is, if you perhaps keep files in a filing cabinet, just make sure it's locked. There's all of these issues around GDPR, protection of people's personal information, which means if it is online, if you have actually transcended into the 21st century, and we do have online records, just make sure they're password protected, make sure they're encrypted, again, for that GDPR purpose. But crucially, what happens if, say, the only person in school that has access to records of recorded bullying incidents or safeguarding issues? What happens if the only person there is a safeguarding lead and they're sick or they're off leave? There needs to be a process of delegation, a clear chain of command as to who has access to these documents, and then who has the access to them in place of that person being off for any reason. Just, it leaves you in a safe position so that there is always somebody on site who has access to incidents and who has access to recording them appropriately. Finally, spot trends or patterns. What do I mean by that? Does bullying behavior, are there specific hate crimes? Does it happen in a certain location? Do you notice, is it before or after the school gates? Is it during lunchtime? Is it when, say, the lads are playing football? Are there trends in the location of these types of behaviors, and are there themes? And I'm going to talk about these themes in more detail, but what I mean by that is there a theme of homophobic language? Things like, oh, that's so gay. Are there themes around race, around gender, sexual orientation, hobbies? Are there themes around, it just seems to happen when people are playing football? Or there are themes around, are students copying things they've heard on a song or on a game? Or is this all come from Fortnite or playing these online video games? What themes are there? Notice them and you'll be able to much be in a better position. I'm going to talk about this in more detail, but also the type of bullying. Spot these trends and patterns around, is it most commonly verbal bullying, which by our own report and those reports done by other organizations is the most common type of bullying behavior in primary schools is verbal bullying. So if you notice that, maybe you could start to do a campaign around positive language. How do we treat each other? Are we speaking to each other with respect? You can start to put these into place, but only when you notice what's going on in your school. And you only notice that with an appropriate recording system. So I realize I got real gestury there. I do care about this topic. So let's go through a checklist. Number one, is every staff member, including non-academic staff, are they all trained on how to record incidents? Do they know to collect every single little detail, no matter how trivial it might sound? It might put you in a better position in the future if you have as much information as possible. Are there clear processes as to how to record, where to keep the information, how to make sure it's protected, and where is the clear line of delegation if, say, one certain staff member is off? Finally, spot those trends. Does bullying behavior seem to take the same type? Is it verbal bullying? Does it happen in a certain time of day, in a certain location in school? Is it around a certain topic? Is it targeted towards a certain group of people? Once you have done that, absolutely the next point of call is to act on those trends, because otherwise you are complicit to this type of culture continuing in school. If you recognize these trends and do nothing about it, I'm sorry, you are never going to be able to tackle bullying appropriately in school. So again, what we're going to do is, like we did with anti-bullying policy, I kind of went through a step-by-step basis on how to make it student-friendly. What I'm going to do now is just a step-by-step basis on how to work with everybody in your school community to take a collaborative approach. And the first one of this is a simple bullying incident form. After this slide, I'm going to show you an example, but it's very straightforward, and you probably already have one of these in school, but it's just a really simple form that can be given out to every single member of your school as to how we get information down, who do you give it to, and where is it kept. Really, really simple, straightforward process that everybody is aware of. Another example is an online reporting system. Every single school has computers. Some of them have tablets, some of them have laptops. What you can do, and again, I'm going to show you an example of this, is you can get the students even to create an online reporting tool. So it's just that you click a button on every school computer and it takes you to an anonymous reporting tool, and you can report that you are being bullied, or you can record bullying behavior on this system, and it can get sent straight to your safeguarding team or whoever it is in school. That can be a really quick win as well. An anonymous box. If you want to make students feel more comfortable to report this type of behavior, perhaps it's easier to do anonymously. Have an anonymous box perhaps in every classroom to report instances of bullying, and then as a staff member, once you've seen these reports, then you go to record. Next, an anti-bullying ambassador safe space. If you don't have ambassadors, this can be buddies or a school council, but perhaps you can set up where one member or two members of these councils or bodies of students can perhaps stay in a certain room or in the library during lunchtime, say every Wednesday, and they're going to be there for 30 minutes so that if anybody in school needs to go and speak to somebody, they can go and speak to these students and report anything, get anything off their chest, and then have a clear process for these students to come and speak to you as staff to record exactly what's been said. Next, parent consultation. What this means is that I'm going to keep banging on about this, but parents play such an important role in the school community, and this fosters this whole school approach. So get parents to come in. This could be held after a parents' evening or any type of event where parents are coming into school, and ask them what they think would be a good idea to foster this culture of reporting, and explain to parents how you record incidences and why. Because they're going to want to have this reaffirmation that the school is doing something to tackle bullying, and it fosters this better integration and better communication between everyone. And finally, as I mentioned, this whole school approach. When you are doing these things, for example, if you have a bullying incident form or an online reporting system, that's something to be quite proud of, to publish out there to parents, which says, this is what we are doing to tackle bullying in school. These are our processes. Hold us to account. Let us know how we can be better, because ultimately you are representative of the community and you do have a duty of care over their children. It could be incredibly proud for you as staff to be proud of the processes you have in place, to be proud of the work you are doing to tackle bullying. So boast it, get parents involved in a consultation, and get student involvement as well. And you will be on your way to having this incredible culture of where bullying behavior or any type of that hateful behavior is not accepted, not tolerated, and you are taking an active stance to do something about it. A couple of examples then. This is just an example of a bullying incident form. It says the name of student reporting, the year group, the date, and simple questions like what happened, try and explain exactly what, why, when, where, how, all of these incidents, who was involved, and any further comments. You've got notes, and then it's action taken by teachers, and then it's a clear process of who to hand this to, where it's kept, and if you want to type this online, where does it go, who has access to it. Really, really quick and easy. And again, make sure that your dinner staff, your bus drivers, your lollipop, lollipop ladies is a stereotype. Anyone can be a lollipop person. Lollipop people, I don't even think that's the correct professional term anymore, but you know exactly what I'm trying to say. Get these people involved, and they know how to record incidents, because as we know, it doesn't just happen in the classroom. When I was speaking about the online reporting tool, this is exactly that. So the brilliant students in Manchester, they kind of made this themselves. They had a reporting button on every laptop or every computer. They made sure that students understood how to do it, and it's just a really quick win as a way to report bullying behavior and a way for you staff to record it as well. So that's my entire spiel of reporting and recording. I hope that that was helpful. What we're going to do now is just go through some further relevant documents for support, then hopefully we'll be able to help you either now during lockdown or as we gear up to go back in schools. The first one, we do have a Facebook group for any staff member we've ever been in contact with. And it's called Educators Against Bullying. It's a really good networking place to share best practice, share what you're struggling with, have some really good ideas, and it can just be a really supportive network of people who are working to tackle bullying across the country. After this, I've mentioned our resources, but please do, Hannah's definitely put a link in the chat, but go onto our online portal because we've really revamped this over the last few months. We have some downloadable resources ready to go. Some of them are on screen now. Keep calm, stay in control for parents and staff, the pressure for perfection online, how to spot fake news, but we also have a lot of primary school focused resources there for students as well. So by all means, have a look. Please take whatever you think would be useful. We've put it on there for you. Next, the Anti-Bullying Alliance have some really good CPD accredited training modules that really help to solidify my own understanding of bullying behavior. And the good news is they're incredibly student friendly. So for me, if I still had my English class, this is absolutely something I would be sending out to them during lockdown and get them to do as almost like PSHE homework. Get them to fill in and complete these training modules. They are very student friendly. And again, it's something CPD accredited that even in primary school is incredibly impressive for these students to start thinking about and for everybody to be on the same page when it comes to bullying behavior. Finally, we are absolutely taking interest for our anti-bullying ambassador training. This is either for brand new students or existing ambassadors with our upskill. Do get in touch. We have a link there to follow. As soon as we're legally able to be back in schools, we will be there. We are itching to train up the next batch of ambassadors. So please do get in touch as we'd love to be out there as soon as possible. Now, it has come to that point of the day where I am absolutely going to open this up to any questions about anti-bullying policies, the ability to record incidences, anything that we've talked about. Feel free to put it into the Q&A box. I'll be checking it now. I'll be answering anything you do have. If you don't, then that is absolutely fine. That means that everything I've said has been completely easy to understand, really easy to follow, and it's covered all of your burning questions. That's how I'm going to take it anyway. Just want to say a massive, massive thank you for those of you joining us this morning, probably in your pajamas. We would absolutely love if you could fill out a feedback form for us because we want to know how to improve these webinars and what topics you'd like to learn about in the future. With that in mind, we do have one more in the series, and then we don't have any more webinars planned specifically with regards to topics. We're waiting to collect all of the information from surveys, and we're going to find out what staff have told us they want to learn about, and then we're going to go and create it. So our next one is next Tuesday for the final one, how to make your anti-bullying campaigns a success, and our tips from working with loads of schools. Please do feel free also to follow us on our social channels, as every webinar we've done before is going to be available on demand very soon. If there are no questions, then I want to wish you an absolutely fantastic Thursday. Got the day correct, the caffeine's kicked in. Just want to say thank you so much for joining me. It's always a pleasure. If I virtually see you, that doesn't really make sense, but you know, if you're with me for our next one on Tuesday, then that will be a pleasure as well. But if not, have a wonderful day, and thank you for being with us this morning.